with, I will say that the COVID crisis has shown us how important it is to empower citizens all over the world to exercise and defend their rights and responsibilities in society, and to play their part in democratic life. And in order to do so, I think that there is a real necessity for stronger education, notably in secondary schools, about rights and responsibilities as citizens, particularly as EU citizens. And actually, there is also a Eurobarometer showing that there is a real willingness to go further in this discussion. So I'm going to present you a book which is not published yet, but is going to be published very soon, and which is a book for school students in Terminal, last year before the baccalaureate, as you probably all know. And this book is trying to trigger the interest in law, which is, at least in France, often presented as boring and technical, and yet is so central to our societies. And in this respect, what's always struck me is that a few decades ago, economic sciences have made their entrance in school programs, and the law was left aside. For long, it was only taught together with economics, but only with a professional target. And consequently, well, now, for many citizens, it is terra incognita. So I think that this new option that is offered to all students from the former sections of science, economy, or literature, all of them can take this option. I think it's a very good initiative that has been taken by the government. And actually, I'm a bit biased because, to tell you the truth, I participated in the first program that was elaborated in 2011, and that was only for les Terminal L. So the idea was to help them to succeed when they were going to enter a law faculty, because those students from the literature sections were not considered the best, and it was felt that if they were going to go into a law faculty, they may have some difficulties. The shift now is completely different. The idea is that all pupils, whatever choice they will make after in university, be they scientists, economists, lawyers, or whatever else, should be interested in such an option, because it's about law and life. It's about the world and Europe. And the idea is not to teach them the law, like this is being done in first year law school. It's rather to broaden their culture, to broaden their interest in the functioning of their societies, and to raise discussions in the classroom. But, you know, not that kind of discussions which go nowhere. Discussions well informed and based on acute and precise information. And discussions on all the topics that are now big issues for the societies, like innovation, the evolution of families, or can robots have a legal personality, that you can see on the cover. And it relates to something we discussed yesterday. So the book closely follows the program that was published by the Ministry of Education in 2019. And I think we can go to the next slide, perhaps, Bertrand. It was done by a team of authors, which I have directed. Actually, I didn't do the slides, otherwise I wouldn't have had put my picture like that. But anyway, so it was done, in fact, by two teams. One made of lawyers, and we were more than 20 lawyers from very different perspectives. Some were judges, well, like the president of the European Court of Justice, co-authored the chapter on EU law. Judges from the Council of State, judges from the Cour de Cassation. We also had lawyers. We also had engineers for the parts on innovation and artificial intelligence. We had somebody from the CNIL and a lot of professors. So, and also we had another team, which was called l'équipe pédagogique, made of professors of lycée, who are used to teaching students, and they've helped in this respect for the book to be really pedagogical. So the students will be taught 3 hours a week this subject. There is no real exam at the end, so it's a voluntary approach. So we very much hope that the students will be interested, and we have to make them interested. That was the big challenge of the book. So in the next slide, you see notably how the book is divided into two parts, which closely follow the program. Sometimes we wanted to get away from the program, but the publisher, he was very keen on us respecting every word that was put in the program. So the first part is about the organization of the law, the
Oh my God, I fear we have lost. Okay.
Great. It's the most interesting and the most challenging one because in 4 chapters, it gathers many, many subjects. For instance, the first chapter on les sujets de droit. Well, in this chapter, you will have, for instance, this question that we raised yesterday: should we give legal personality to nature or to a river to better protect it? And I don't know if you can see the page. No, probably not you. But so we have this discussion, and oh yes, no, Bertrand, you can stay on the other. Okay. Then we have a chapter on liberty, equality, fraternity, with a lot of various subjects. One on person and families, and also bioethics. Another one on companies, and another one on innovation. In fact, so we can go to the next one. And it shows you how one chapter is made, and it shows you how different it is from legal textbooks that we are used to. Down at the bottom of the slide, you have the opening of the chapter. So here, I don't know if you can well see it, but it's the chapter 5 on persons, family, and bioethic. And one important discussion was what kind of pictures should we put? And I realized on this occasion that school books contain a lot of pictures, and that we were always constrained. We couldn't put as much text as we wanted. And I was always irritated because a lot of space was dedicated to the pictures. But I think it's good for the students. And you can see here the choice of the pictures. 4 pictures for the family was highly controversial because, of course, presenting one of a traditional family and the other one with 2 women and 2 children is not completely neutral. Anyway, afterwards, we have what we call repères, where we give some main text and main clues to enter into a chapter. Then we have only 1 page with a lesson. And it's really very short, so it was very challenging for the authors, who were all specialized in their subject, to write in 1 page a full lesson on that topic, such as bioethic, for instance. Then we have exercises and also a debate, also a page dedicated to what we call le grand oral, which is a new exercise for the students who take the baccalaureate. And so it helps them to make links between what they see in this book and all the other subjects that they have seen during their studies. And finally, there is a sort of summary of everything that was put in the chapter. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, I think we can go a little, now we can move forward. I don't want to take too much time presenting the book. So here on bioethics, you see it illustrates what I've just said. Right, and at the end of the book, we also have some pages on professions. And we have testimonies from various professionals, and we also have a few pages, methodological pages, to show how to be good when you have an oral, how to analyze the rule of law, how to deal with a case, things like that. And finally, we have a lexic. So I think it's an interesting book that should, in fact, be read by everybody, not only by school students. And this is what I wanted to exchange with you beyond the book. Now that and in fact, it took us 2 years to do the book. We had a first publisher who decided not to do it because it's an optional subject, and he was scared that there would not be a big market for the book, precisely because the lycée are not necessarily buying the books when it's an option. So after 1 year, they gave up, and also the COVID came, and so we were late. So the project was abandoned. I then tried to do an ebook, which will be completely free, and I used a platform from the MIT, but I realized that it was a lot of work and not my expertise at all. So finally, Nathan decided to do it, and we're very grateful for that, because I think they took a commercial risk, and also a risk because it's quite difficult to work on the one hand with lawyers, on the other hand with professors from secondary school. So now what I would like to do is to try to draw from this experience for creating a course for Erasmus students, whatever subject they take in their university. They can be engineers, they can be in medicine, to present the law and the important democratic issues related to the law. And I would like to do it first in France, of course, because I realized that in other countries, when Erasmus students arrive, they have a class of 1 semester sometime on the culture of the country. And I'm not sure that in France we do this. And also, Erasmus is a European success. And I think that it will be a good idea that the EU promotes such a class. It could be a Freshers' Week, for instance, and it could be done not only in France, but all over Europe. And we're going to reflect on this with the European Law Institute. They are interested, and we're going to see how we could adjust and adapt this book to make it a small book for students, Erasmus students who arrive in a university. So it will be less about French law, but rather European values, European institutions. But the idea is certainly not to present European institutions as they are traditionally, but rather to tell stories of citizens who defended their rights, such as the story of Max Schrems, for instance, or Mr. Costeja, who obtained the right to be forgotten. The idea is really to trigger the interest of students, to deepen their understanding of EU values, of EU objectives, of EU principles, and invite them to critical thinking, but also to play their role as European citizens. So this should be done collectively, together with other scholars and judges from other European countries, and hopefully also with the European Commission, because the European Union is very active in promoting a vision of European education area. And if it cannot do much for schools, because it's the competence of member states, well, it has competence to act, particularly in relation to Erasmus Plus programs. And it could do it also with the European universities it has set up, and with all the alliances, the transnational alliances it is setting up now, which are promoting European values and identity. So, but that's just the beginning, because the first step is publishing the book, and let us see if many students take it next year in Terminal. And I know that a lot of professors are very keen to teach the subject. These are necessary secondary professors, so most of them have not studied law. And this is why we are also going to do now a book for professors to accompany that book, so that they have more materials to teach and be prepared to do it in a very dynamic manner. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Benedicte. I was wondering, maybe, and that would maybe make a transition with David Oppenheimer's presentation. But I think maybe we should adapt our university textbook to that kind of presentation and standards. So, and I was wondering, especially with the students, the university students going, on Zoom and online, if they will not expect to have their future textbooks, legal textbooks, as attractive as your project. Wonderful project. So I see that there are a lot of questions. Maybe we have a row of questions, and then we move to David. If David, you agree with that? Yeah. So yes, I don't. I think Louis Bernard was the first one to shoot.
Thank you, Bertrand. Congratulations, Benedicte, both for your presentation and best wishes for this book. It's a wonderful initiative, and I personally have always been convinced that education in the lower classes is really a key to understanding the world, and what you're doing is absolutely wonderful. I have two remarks to make. One relating to France, and the other one to the European front. Regarding France, some of you may be aware that the Paris Bar has started several years ago, I think more than 10 years ago, to an action which is called Initia Droit in classes, precisely of colleges and lycée, to spread the gospel of legal, what is law for, what does the law means for in everyone's daily life. And this has been a very successful initiative. It's still going on, and it's been taken up also by the French National Bar Council, le Conseil National des Barreaux, which is doing once a year in association with the Ministry of Higher Education, of Education, sorry, the one-day classroom by lawyers in lycées and colleges that are volunteering for that. So it's a joint venture between the bar and the Ministry of Education, and on the common theme, volunteered lawyers go and speak about the theme that was selected by the ministry in classes, and this is a great success. 2 years ago, the theme was bullying, le harcèlement, and I think that 1,500 colleges were volunteering to have lawyers come in, and they came. And last year, it was the theme was violence to girls and women. So all of this is I think goes in the same direction. That is to explain that law is not a very abstract subject, but it actually touches everyone's lives, and I think that is important to highlight. The other remark I wanted to make is regards Europe. There are funds. You mentioned, Benedicte, the European Law Institute. I'm actually active in the European Lawyers Foundation, and we get funds from the European Commission for training of professionals, and we have exchanges. We create programs, and these are funded by the EU to have exchanges of lawyers from one country to the other, or to train lawyers in particular areas of the law, like asylum law. And this is also very successful. So I think that your book is bound to be a great success, and this is what I wish you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis Bernard. So now that you've said this, I'm going to come back to you, and we will see how we can promote this also for training professionals.
Then the Fidesz chairperson is happy, because it's part of the Fidesz recipe to make people work together. Laurence, I think you had a question, and maybe Eric afterwards?
Well, it's more a comment. First, to praise this work. I think it's really great. And we all know how difficult it is to make things looking simple. And we know that it's a lot of work behind that. I think it's a great initiative, because I have my last son has just turned 18 last year, and so I was able to look at his books, and I was wondering actually, because there were just some small, some kind of law information, legal information about how the parliament works and things like that, and it was quite poor. So I'm very happy to see that you are. I mean, this is not a job for, I'm not going to say that they don't know the matter, but all these books were actually prepared by teachers in history and geography, or sometimes in economics, but they were not lawyers. So I think it's really great to have lawyers taking their part in that exercise. I have two suggestions, by the way. You mentioned that you try to do it as an e-book from the beginning. Maybe it was quite ambitious, but now maybe you can turn it in an e-book, into an e-book after. I mean, it's a matter of finding the support for that. And also I was thinking about another area for your book, which is not Europe, but which is Francophonie. And that could be also something, of course, then you have to adapt, because it's also a cultural matter. But I think the structure is there. Many questions are also universal questions. And I think the Francophonie could be a good support as well. But anyway, thank you. It was great, a great exercise. Congratulations.
Thank you, Laurence. Well, Laurence, Francophonie, I think you're the right woman for this challenge. So again, we'll speak about that, because it's a great idea.
Good.
Just to mention that actually Laurence is in Dakar nowadays currently. Thank you to have joined from so far away in the south. Eric, you had a question or a comment? Maybe your microphone.
Yes, my mic.
Yeah.
The thing is, I mean, it's of course you are presenting that in a medium which is a little bit more than 500 years old. And the question is whether you shouldn't really start, if you make this effort, which is wonderful, to have an interactive kind of medium, which means basically that you can communicate with these sources. That's of course very complicated, and it's another way. But if you look at the texts, I mean, the American texts, for example, in economics, the principal texts are now, the book format is left even in technical books, and you can interact with these books and get to other sources and look at it. And if I see these young people running around with their handies, the computer is already gone. You realize that obviously this is something how they communicate with the world. And the question is, do they look in books anymore? I mean, this is only a very far-reaching thing, but at the moment we are all looking at different forms of education and of communication. And it's obvious that you can transfer all these wonderful things which you have developed in the book medium, that means an old medium, and can transfer it to this interactive world of exchanges via the net. And that would be, of course, and it's not only an e-book, but just an interactive medium in which you can do that. By the way, my daughter is in charge in Potsdam, near Saint-Sauveur. They're actually in the castle, in the palace of the Prussian kings, the university, and in Sanssouci, she teaches languages plus culture. They have this Erasmus thing which you talked about, and they have always sections in culture. But how do they do that? They don't teach culture, but they use clippings from newspapers to introduce specifically cultural things, and then transfer that to the students, and students are discussing recent newspaper things. She's always picking up new things from the press and discussing that for purposes of teaching culture. So it's not a setup of a teaching set for culture, and they are using, of course, all the technology. I mean, the modern teaching vehicles, which is, of course, not only whiteboard, but plus, I mean, the interactive things for their teaching. And I'm always impressed, being an old person who has always been a kind of frontal or maybe Socratic teacher in the United States. But I, of course, never was involved in this kind of technological field, which they are involved in. And it's amazing what can be done there.
Maybe.
Thank you for this wonderful thing. It's really necessary and very important.
And actually, you're completely right, and I should have said it. You have videos and podcasts in the book, and the students with their handy can just put it, and then they will see the video in class, provided the professor allows them to get their phone out. And also, now in France, some parts of France, where in some parts of France, la région does not buy physical books any longer. So internet. So they access. You buy an electronic book, and so the publisher has been confronted to all these questions, and they're going to make it also hopefully a modern instrument. And something that struck me while doing this is that the way the books for scholars are for school are done, because it's short text, very short extracts of text, and no link one with another, and you just put them, and it is for the professor to make the links and to recreate the story. And in fact, it's very challenging, I think. I'm not completely sure it's the best way to teach. And in a way, I became a bit critical towards books and publishers and at schools, because I think they dedicate too much space to exercises, questions, pictures, and not enough, I think, to lessons as such. But perhaps I'm old-fashioned.
Okay, so I think maybe it's a good transition to switch to the to David's presentation, because actually I think his presentation is about a very challenging experiment. David, the floor is yours. I think you don't have any presentation, so I can switch off the presentation of Benedicte.
Très bien. Thank you so much for Bertrand for inviting me. Thank you all for your interest in this presentation. Congratulations, Benedicte, on this wonderful project that you've presented. Well, Paul Romer said that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And he was talking about economics, but of course this group understands that economics and education are interwoven. And the COVID-19 crisis has been, I think, a remarkable opportunity for us to innovate in the way we educate, and in particular for those of us who are interested in the study and the teaching of comparative law, that the crisis of the pandemic and the technologies that are moving so quickly in response to the pandemic have created opportunities for us to shrink the globe in the way that we teach and study together. In addition to my teaching and my research, one of the things that I do at the law school at Berkeley is to direct a center, which is the Berkeley Center on Comparative Equality and Anti-Discrimination Law. And we have approximately 750 members who are academics and activists and advocates from every continent but Antarctica. Probably 2/3 of our members are from outside of North America. We operate in English, although again, probably 1/2 to 2/3 of our members speak English as a second or third or fourth language. And we bring together students at Berkeley and students from around the world and faculty from around the world. So when the pandemic hit, a group of us thought it would be a good idea to begin exploring with our students the ways in which the pandemic was exacerbating global inequalities. We put out a call in May of last year, working very closely. The two people really leading the project were myself and Panos Kopatos, who is from Greece and teaches currently at the University of Portsmouth in the UK. And ultimately, we gathered a group of 22 faculty who were able to bring students from 15 of their universities into a course that met once a week at 1700 Universal Time, and together explore the global inequalities brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our reading materials were recent journal articles, recent newspaper articles, pieces that some of us were in the process of drafting. We began with a few classes on the foundations of the theories of inequality, from Socrates to Catherine McKinnon and Sandra Fredman. We moved on to sources of equality law, looking at sources of European law, sources of American law, sources of international law. We brought together, I should have said, universities from Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, the United States, Canada, Central Canada, Eastern Canada, France, Paris, the UK, Italy, Hong Kong, and Australia. Oh, and South Africa. In our meetings, the technology of Zoom allowed us to have very interactive discussions. So, I should return to the curriculum. After the basics of the study of inequality and equality law, we moved into specific subjects like the pandemic and its impact on women. So the gender aspects of the pandemic inequalities, race and racism, age and the impact of the pandemic on age, which I will say I had expected would focus on the problem of elderly persons in nursing homes where the pandemic was continues to be so awful in terms of the impact. But it turned out to be also very much on the impact on young people in terms of education and in terms of isolation. And within that category, young gays and lesbians, transgender people, and the increased impact of being at home with their families, often unsupportive families, in a very vulnerable situation. So there were lots of surprises along the way. We looked at disability and the impact of the pandemic, the impact on low-wage workers, on migrants. And in each instance, we had 2 or 3 faculty in charge of each class meeting who would bring perspectives from different parts of the world. In a typical class, we'd begin with a presentation drawn from the reading of perhaps 10 minutes, and then move into breakout rooms, as Zoom allows us so easily to do. And the breakout rooms would shift each class, but they would always include 5 students from 5 different universities. Usually we'd have at least 1 student from South America, 1 student from North America, 1 student from Europe in any breakout room. Faculty moved among the breakout rooms to help direct the conversation, but the conversation was based always on a problem that had been presented prior to the class meeting, so that the students, in addition to doing the reading for the class, could use the reading to prepare their thoughts about the problem of the day. We then move out of the breakout room and into a plenary discussion, and then a brief panel discussion among the faculty for the day. We take a break and we do it all again. So in a 2-hour period, we would have 2 essentially 1-hour or close to 1-hour discussions, again, based on the reading and based on a problem that we wanted the students to address in the breakout room. We ultimately had about 150 students. We didn't have them all at the beginning because South American universities start their law classes in early August, North American in late August and early September, British French in mid-September. Some of the European schools didn't arrive until the beginning of October. But it all worked out. And it all worked beautifully. And so we're going to continue this next fall. We've shifted the topic. We're going to be studying generally the topic of comparative equality and anti-discrimination law. We again expect to have 15 universities. Paris 1, again, will be one of our partners. And I expect we'll have many more students. We'll probably have in the range of 300 students, approximately 20 students per school. We'll have some faculty from other universities who want to participate but can't, for one reason or another, bring students with them. And the feedback we've gotten from the students and from each other is that this is a marvelous way to bring together diverse points of view from many different legal systems and look at approaches to common problems through the lens of comparative law in a way that has been wonderfully illuminating for the students, but also for the faculty. It's also a format that we can leverage. We went to the designers of our Berkeley X, also known as edX, MOOC designers, MOOC department at Berkeley, MOOCs being massive online courses, and proposed to them that we take some of the material from the COVID course and turn it into a MOOC. They were thrilled. They've been very enthusiastic. They've been enormously helpful. They're very, very good at designing online teaching materials. And sometime around July 1, we will go live with a Berkeley X MOOC course with faculty from 22 universities from 6 continents. And I recently asked the MOOC director about their decision process in terms of accepting our proposal. And he explained that they do an analysis that's, I think, fairly sophisticated based on prior experience as to what they should expect in terms of the number of people who will be interested. And they told us they thought that the initial enrollment in our class, the MOOC class, will probably be in the range of 20,000 students. And then if there's good feedback, it will grow from there. If the feedback is not as good, it may remain steady. But there's an enormous opportunity using technology to really leverage the relationships that we build as comparative law scholars and teachers. And I wanted to let you know a little bit about this project, but I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm happy to answer questions. And again, thank you so much, Bertrand, for inviting me to participate. And I do hope that next year I can join you in the Alps, but I will say that what we're seeing, we miss, of course, each other's company and the ability to sit around over a meal after the presentations, and look forward to returning to that. But the ease with which we could all participate in this discussion today is a reflection of these wonderful new technologies that are being developed and that we are finding ways of using to draw the world closer. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for I mean, describing and analyzing this incredible experiment. I think, of course, I have, you know, well, I'm no longer at university as a full-time professor. I think colleagues here are much more involved, either as professors or even as deans in the current time. But I was impressed by the idea of having, as you said, breakout rooms, because one thing that I think that's really a purely personal point of view, and I have very few experience except the course I teach at Nanterre during last semester. But I believe the present pandemic has maybe hit a very harsh blow on the French habit to have formal lectures in front of, you know, an amphitheater where you have maybe 300, 400, let alone in the first year, maybe 800 students at the same time. And up to the level that, I mean, I was chatting on Facebook with some former colleagues today, and because they, some of them posted some pictures of their amphitheaters, because currently in most universities, students are allowed to come back at least for one day a week and to have physical teaching, présentiel, as we said. And actually, the amphitheaters were empty because the students apparently don't want really to come back physically to universities, which I think is from my point of view, is really a puzzle. But I'm too long. Maybe I see that there are maybe some comments from Laurence, Benedicte, Eric. Who wants to, or maybe Louis Bernard? So who wants to start?
I can start just to praise this presentation, and I think it's really interesting to see the ability to just, I mean, creating something like that during the crisis was obviously very interesting. And I think we have all experienced the change in our the way we are working, and I think it has expanded our world. And you see, I'm in Dakar, and I don't know where you are, but I think this is great, and it's changing a lot of things, and specifically for people like us working on comparative topics, or topics that really need to have different views and perspective. And I'm actually very happy not to have to go back to physical meetings all the time, because I think we spend too much time into these meetings, and it was a lot of time lost, actually, even in traveling. So I think we are working more efficiently, but we are working differently. And it's another way of working, but I think it's a great discovery. Sorry about the circumstances are terrible because it's the COVID case, but otherwise for us, it's a new step, and we would never go back, I think, to our previous ways of teaching and working. So thank you for your initiative. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, well, if I may, first, congratulations for this, because it's really important and interesting. And it's great to have a worldwide consciousness of how pandemic is exacerbating global inequalities. I know that the British government has ordered the British Academy a study which is very much along the same line. So I don't know if you came across it, but it's an interesting study which also stresses how it has exacerbated inequalities between men and women, notably. But I think your point about using technology to leverage the relationship that we build is very important. And it's not always easy to do so because, well, it depends also on the means that you have. And what you said about your center in Berkeley or wherever, which offered you to do a MOOC, is very illustrative of the fact that some big universities in some countries will, of course, do better in this than others. And I'm a bit afraid that eventually education will be concentrated into these big universities. And because, of course, technology will provide for much better classes and much easier ways of teaching. So we also have to think about this and how technology is exacerbating global inequalities too.
I completely agree that the changes that technology brings may prove to be very disruptive. And it seems to me that the traditional lecture to 800 students, which is an important part of education, not only in France, but around the globe, that we really should try to identify the very best lecturers, those who do the very best job of taking the current research and explaining it in ways that fully engage the students, so that this is the most interesting way to sit and receive information to the extent that we're going to receive information through the large lecture. Why should it be 800 when it can be 80,000? But what that means is that we can repurpose what we do as scholars and teachers to work in small groups with students in ways that are interactive and in ways that really challenge our students to think and to work through problems with us in a way that it's very difficult to do. Well, it's impossible to do in a class of 800. It's impossible to do in a class of 50 or 100, well, 50 or 100 maybe. We try it in the Socratic method in the US. But if we're simply presenting information, let's do that in the biggest possible room so that we can repurpose our time for the kinds of conversations with students in which we really engage them and force them to think and think through and speak through. And gosh, if it's appropriate that it's 5 students for some particular topic, but 3 of them are in Paris and 1 is in Stockholm and 1 is in Berkeley, that doesn't matter. That's fine. We can do that through our cooperation.
I see that Régis is reacting on the chat. So maybe Régis, who has a fairly extensive experience teaching in various jurisdictions. I mean, from Mauritius to Mongolia. Régis, do you want to take the floor?
Yes, that's possible, but I'm sorry, I will not put the video on because I'm wearing my Friday wear. So my thing, I had the opportunity to experience also this online teaching and all. And I had the experience also to go abroad and to see also their demand regarding teaching. I am convinced that this online teaching will work for certain type of people, because we are already assuming that the student will be sufficiently motivated, that they do not need like a physical proximity with the professors, and that in a way they can self-organize themselves. The problem that we will have, or the different problem that I'm seeing and opportunities. Opportunity number 1, which is pretty clear, we will have an access to many teaching and lectures that we would not have an access to otherwise. Like if you are going to Mongolia, if you are going to China, they are in demand for certain type of teaching and they cannot have an access to this type of teaching. I'm pretty sure that in Dakar, that would be, and Senegal, that would be almost the same thing. So on that, this is a clear opportunity, which is like, of course, extremely good. the problem that I'm seeing is that if we are considering that education, at least in part, is having a signaling function, then we are going to have quite an issue. Because if all the teaching are available online, if everybody can get certificates online or diploma online, then it will be very difficult to identify actually the people who are having the qualities. And that's something that will be extremely, extremely complex. And that's the reason why I'm not sure that we are going to have, like, in a way, one big university for everyone in the world. I'm pretty sure that we need to have this diversity for this reason. So my thing would just be like, we need to identify the people. Like, quite frankly, I participate to some like professional training online. That's working perfectly. Like, for professional, that's perfect. For undergrad students, I'm not sure that it will work. For professional, I'm sure it will work. For masters, I still believe that at least a certain level of physical teaching is required. But these are just my experiences.
I don't disagree. I think that this is why I say that if we can repurpose what it means to teach so that most of us, except the extraordinarily talented and entertaining, are giving fewer lectures and spending more of our time with small groups of students, that our teaching is likely to be more effective. And the efficiency gains from the huge lectures give us time to do that which we can do most effectively, most meaningfully. But I know that in the past few years, an increasing amount of my real teaching has been through my incorporation of students into my research projects. 10 years ago, I had typically in a semester, I'd have one, maybe two research assistants. I now have, I think, approximately 25. And they're broken into 6 projects that I'm working on. And in each case, I meet with them once or twice a week. And I talk about what I'm hoping to find, and I help direct them, and they're doing much of the research, and they are so excited to be part of the project. And they are finding things I would not have found. And I watch them grow. And what I've started doing in the past couple of years is combining graduate law students with undergraduate pre-law students. And they bring different talents. They bring, for some reason, the pre-law students have an absolute love of technology that the law students already fear, being just a few years older. And that in turn has meant finding things at the University of Cape Town that my graduate law students probably wouldn't have found, that have been absolutely eye-opening in terms of the importance of the anti-apartheid movement to the US civil rights movement in ways that have been unexplored, and one example among many. But our students are in some ways they're resources, but they're also that if we can move from spending a lot of time in big lecture halls to spending time with small groups of students, I just think that we can accomplish so much more.
I think there is a reaction from Louis Bernard.
Yes, yes. I'd like to thank Professor Oppenheimer for bringing up this very good topic. Thank you so much. Benedicte and Bertrand know that I can be provocative, so I will be provocative, and I apologize to the many academics that form a majority of this gathering. But 2 remarks. First, I think we can rather easily agree, I hope, that education is about conveying a message or transmitting knowledge effectively. And secondly, neurosciences have taught us that the attention span of humans is rather low. Actually, the attention span of politicians is even lower. In any case, this explains the success of the TED series. In a TED series, I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's a very short, recorded speeches or conferences that are extremely widely listened to and viewed by many on a variety of subjects. And in, say, 10 to 15 minutes, a lot is being transmitted in terms of knowledge very effectively. So I'm actually reacting to a point made by David Oppenheimer a moment ago, that you need to get the very best to present a subject. And this is basically what TED series are doing. But they do it not in a lecture. The word lecture made me react to and made me raise my hand to speak now, because I think that the format of a lecture is to be questioned, is really something that is of the past and should be revisited entirely, because youngsters, and we all have hopefully youngsters around us, they keep us young, and they are not they are not keen of sitting down and listening to elaborate long lectures, even if they are interesting and done by very able, competent people. That is not their thing. So please bear with me and accept my disruption.
Okay. David or a comment, or Eric, do you wanted to make a comment? I will have a comment on comparative law, by the way.
No, comparative law, but Louis, you are absolutely, David, this is a wonderful thing what you are doing there, and it's clear that it's also will make its way. The thing is, what you realize, I taught a class in complex business contracts, and it's precisely what Louis said. The degree of attention. I mean, if you have a complex subject matter and you have materials and you have teaching, I realized that after half an hour, you are finished. The students are finished, and of course you have to get through. And then you are doing too much, and it's very hard to calibrate that. The next point is superstars. I mean, there are excellent teachers. I just listened to Larry Kramer yesterday, and Larry is a sensational teacher. He's now out of teaching. You know Larry, of course. I mean, he's a sensational teacher. And I also had Charlie Myers, for example, when I was at Stanford. I went to Charlie's class because that was a star who would teach property like nobody else. This was a Texan who was coming in like John Wayne, and people were already gazing at him, and then he was starting and making cases and jumping around. These stars are super, but the thing is, what you know from the movie business, and that's the nearest what we have, is you finally want to touch the stars. And that's a very, very important thing. I mean, the only example where we know something about mass movements and MOOCs is Hollywood and the Hollywood movies, and the excitement about the stars and the kind of things happening with stars and stardom. And we have to reflect that point. I mean, we are all people. I'm an old horse, was teaching all my life, 45 years now. And I can teach basically, so it's okay. But I was never a super teacher, and I was very proud that I was not the best of all, because it attracted people to see me failing and so forth. I mean, I was best when I was really sick or when I was really weak, because if you come in and you are a super champion, I mean, I always realized that if you are really good, in teaching. I mean, you really ruin the students because they say we will never achieve that. So you want to see also the feebleness of the lecturer who is failing, who is admitting his failure, and so forth. All these things are very important for educational purposes. And I would not be happy to be a star and to be shouted at in large amphitheaters, teaching there and being raised with candlesticks, and things like that. That's the end of it. And the thing is, I mean, I understand why Larry quit teaching. So this is also a point. But as you know, I mean, there are super teachers at Berkeley. I also have been at Berkeley, also teaching a little bit. But I mean, it's a nice place. These places are all good enough to be there, but you're happy to be in the atmosphere, to see the girls, for me, or the boys on the other side. And all these things are important for what we call universities. And this is at least my experience, that if we are missing that kind of context, also we are missing Saint-Sauveur and the wine and the things to eat and so forth, and the skiing. It's so important to have these outside factors for learning something and for being educated that we can't really, I mean, I share your, David, I'm absolutely with you with your course and all your remarks, which were really super, but we also have to look at these aspects.